And they're me.
It's so funny, Gina. You and I don't get to host the show together ever, really. We work together every Tuesday, but rarely do we get to work together on Friday. So this is kind of exciting, Gina. It's kind of unusual. Our readers are so blessed to get both Aaron and Gina today.
You know what's also unusual? You and I do not usually wear what some people call official uniforms, some people call Class A uniforms. We don't usually wear those on air, but we are today for good reason. Again, this is Cub Chat Live. We are super happy to have you. If you are a Cub Scout leader, a Cub Scout parent, or anybody in the scouting program, today's episode is for you. I'll also encourage you guys to check out what we call Troop Talk Live. We had an episode on Wednesday where we talked uniforms. So today, Aaron and I kind of was born out of a conversation we were having. But yeah, we wanted to do another uniform talk. This time, we're focused on Cub Scouts. But it began, thinking, okay, let's do a Cub Scout uniform episode. And then I said, I'm not a leader with a Cub Scout pack. I'm an adventuring crew.
As you guys can see, right, Gina's not wearing a Cub Scout adult uniform.
Yeah, so I asked Aaron, do leaders ever wear their venturing uniform to a Cub Scout meeting, perhaps? And we kind of did some exploration for the answer. I know my interpretation of what the answer was. I'm curious what your interpretation was, Aaron.
Yeah, I think that's a great starting point because the BSA uniform, policy, rules, and regulations, on the one hand, it's kind of simple. On the other hand, when you start asking questions like that, it gets a little bit more complicated. So we're going to try to address some of those today. But the answer to that question, what we figured out, Gina, is that yes, if you are a registered adult with a venturing crew and you are, for whatever reason, at a pack meeting, Cub Scout pack meeting, helping out, helping lead that meeting or whatever, you can wear your venturing uniform. It is a BSA uniform. There are many advantages to that, or at least a handful of advantages to that, not the least of which is maybe those folks will ask, what kind of uniform you're wearing? And that gives you an opportunity to promote the venturing program, right?
Yeah, that's kind of how I interpreted it as well. So like if you are a regular leader at a Cub Scout meeting and you wear your official uniforms quite a bit, it seems like you want to have a traditional Cub Scout leader uniform ready to put on. But let's say you have a lot of kids and you volunteer with a lot of units and you just didn't have time to change and you've got your venturing uniform on, or maybe you're a venturing leader who was asked to lead a Cub Scout meeting. It would be okay to wear your uniform and talk about why am I wearing a green uniform today? And the same, it sounds like, is true if perhaps you're wearing your Cub Scout leader uniform and you go to a Scouts BSA meeting. Yes. You can remind everyone of their tie to Cub Scouts and why it's important to care about Cub Scouts and meet Cub Scouts and set a good example for Cub Scouts.
Right. The difference between a Cub Scout adult uniform shirt, which is what I'm wearing here, and an adult Scouts BSA uniform shirt, a lot more subtle than differences between a venturing shirt, right?
Yes.
But the same policy applies. And I just had this question asked the other day, Gina, by some folks. You can see unit numbers on the side of your shirt there. What if you're a registered? What if you have two kids, maybe a boy and a girl, and they're members of different Scouts BSA troops, and they have different unit numbers, and you're a registered adult in both troops? Do you have to have two different uniforms? The answer is no. You don't have to have two different uniforms. You could if you wanted to, but you don't have to. There's also different options. This doesn't come off of my uniform. I would tear a hole in my uniform if I ripped this off. We learned that, there's no rule that says this has to be sewed on there permanently. You can use fabric fasteners and things like that to switch out the numbers. Yes, I wasn't going to use the brand name.
I was.
No. but yeah, so there is room for some interpretation in the BSA uniform rules. That's kind of what we're here to talk about. If you guys have any questions, Gina and I will do our best to answer them. But yeah, there's certainly, there's a reason why the BSA has uniforms, right, Gina? It's not just this sort of throwaway thing.
Right. And that was explained in a way I'd never heard before on Wednesday. And it was really helpful, about what it means when we say the uniform is a method of scouting. I didn't really fully understand that. Again, I highly encourage everybody to go back, watch Wednesday's episode, whether you are a volunteer with Cub Scouts, Scouts BSA, venturing. It's a really informative episode. A few comments. Gail says she wears her venturing uniform all the time, promoting the green. Perfect,
nice
Gail.
Job, Gail.
I honestly I gravitate towards wearing my venturing uniform too. It's a better color on me, so I like it, And then Wendy says they use Velcro since they can remove the unit number and position patch. Rob's glad you still have the uniform. And Aaron, I've got a question for you.
Yes.
If you took off all the patches, you took off the epaulets, is there any difference between the leader uniforms for Scouts, BSA, and Cub Scouts?
No, I don't. I think the actual shirt underneath it all is exactly the same. You'll notice mine says Boy Scouts of America. Sorry, over here, a lot of the new ones say Scouts. It just says BSA, right? It doesn't have. Yeah, it's all. Yeah, it just says
Scouts.
BSA.
It says
right.
BSA. But what we discovered too is I have like a vintage uniform. I want to get into proper usage shape, and it says you tell because you saw it for the first time today.
Yes, I saw the photo of a uniform you said from what decade? 80s?
I think it's from the 80s.
Yes, and it said Scout BSA, B.S.A., which is not a branding that you see nowadays very much. I thought it was kind of interesting that they called their back then Scout BSA, a little not quite Scouts BSA.
But it is.
And the period's, a little bit different of a style. But interesting that was being used back in the 80s. I didn't know that.
And what's different too is it doesn't have the World Scouting emblem. It doesn't have any messengers of peace. Like it does look a little different. So I have to research exactly how I bring a uniform like that into today. What do I keep on it? What do I not keep on it? But it is interesting to just see the evolution of what's on them. Aaron, riddle me this.
Yes.
Does that uniform still have life? Can you wear an old uniform?
Yeah, I don't think that uniforms ever expire. I could definitely wear this uniform if I was volunteering at any sort of scout event where they asked folks to wear their uniform. I would absolutely show up in this uniform.
Beautiful. And 100%. Rob chimes in to say that the commissioner uniform is the same shirt as well. And he's referring to that same base shirt for Cub Scout leaders, Scouts, leaders.
Right. It seems, it kind of seems inefficient to have to own a bunch of different versions of the same shirt just because the patches are different, right? So that's why we had the comment from Wendy who said they use Velcro to switch them out. That seems like a pretty good solution. If you have different unit numbers, different positions, things like that. So I have my old position right down here. That wouldn't qualify anymore. I'm no longer a Cub Master, but you could switch that out if you were forward thinking enough and keep the same shirt. The basic shirt is the same.
Right. And you say, that's very sensible. There are people out there like me and many of our viewers who take the total different approach and they want to collect every little piece of history they can. They've got the yellow Cub Scout, formerly Den Mom, shirt, and they love to wear that. And it's yellow and so there's a lot of ways to take this. You could have a different shirt for every unit you serve. You could be thrifty and use Velcro to swap out patches and such.
Yep.
Charlene says they've always been told that once a uniform, always a uniform. I think that's definitely true. Okay, I'm going to read a controversial comment. Aaron,
let's do it.
Yes,
we're not afraid of controversy on this show, Gina. We're
it is controversial. Right into it. And I'm going to get controversial. Okay, so Hannah, who's watching on YouTube, shout out, says, I'm a leader in a troop. Assistant Scoutmaster, one of my fellow leaders tells me to button up. I prefer to wear it unbuttoned. My opinion is that it shouldn't matter if it's buttoned, unbuttoned. Hannah, okay, I'm going to start by saying the BSA says to button it up. Secondly, I totally agree with you. It's much cooler to leave it unbuttoned, and I totally agree with you. But right now, I don't believe that is something that you're supposed to do.
When we say unbuttoned, we're talking about unbuttoned all the way.
Yeah, because it's kind of in style to wear like shirts over with unbuttoned like a t-shirt. So
and kind of a similar. We talked about this, Gina, a little bit before we went on the air. That is the idea of tucking it in or leaving it untucked. Is it okay to wear your uniform untucked? Exactly. And BSA now says that is up to the individual unit to make a decision. One thing I think that is important for Hannah maybe and for everybody to know is that, the word uniform, it doesn't just mean the fabric. It's the idea that we're all the same. Like the whole philosophy behind the BSA uniform is that we're all a part of the same team. We're all a part of the same group. And each unit has some leeway to create some of their own policies. Now, they can't change anything that's set in stone by the national policy, right? But they could decide things like, we're going to allow you to wear it untucked. Or at this particular event, when it's super hot or whatever, we're going to allow you to unbutton a little bit or whatever it might be, something like that. There is some leeway. So, Hannah, you may have done this already, but I would say go talk to your troop committee and just get some feedback. Just throw it out there and see what they say.
I think Hannah, you and I, we have to accept that this is the way they want the uniform worn, or we want the uniform worn, but it's okay to express your opinion because the uniform is intended to be an equalizer, kind of like Aaron said,
Yep.
and so maybe that is moot if your uniform's open and we put focus on t-shirts. But at the same time, I'm a big advocate that people shouldn't feel self-conscious in their uniforms.
Right.
And sometimes people do because it's just not the fashion maybe you would always wear. So
yes,
it's good to have these kinds of conversations.
It's not like going to the store and picking out a shirt that specifically fits you the way you like. There are different uniforms come a long way a little bit. There's now different shapes for men and women. There's different options like that. There's short sleeves or long sleeves, but you can't really, like you say, Gina, pick it out one that fits you the best way because the uniform is what it is. It is a uniform. So I think that's a great point there.
And it does change. Remember, like Aaron pointed out, now units can decide if they want to tuck in their uniform or not. And I do believe there are women have like shirts that don't have to be tucked in ever. There are some that are cut that way. So be sure to look into that if it's a restriction for you. Also want to read Christine's comment. They had a Cub who wore his grandfather's Cub uniform from the 1950s. His grandfather, father, uncles, and him have worn it.
That's pretty cool. And Aaron, that's 100% okay. That's allowed within the rules. Yeah.
I'm sure the patches were updated. We watched, I think it was Scouter Stan is the name of the YouTube that we watched. And he's just kind of Scouter commissioner who makes YouTube videos. But he said something that really stuck with me in a video I watched earlier today saying he was like, leaders know your BSA uniforms last forever. They're made with quality materials. They're not necessarily wearing out on you. And I realize that is definitely true. And when we hear stories like that, like a uniform lasting from the 50s, it's got to be true, right?
Absolutely. And I think that's become even more true. It's probably been 20 or so years now when they started making uniforms out of a slightly different fabric, a little more of like an outdoor wicking type, fabric that's designed, if you get rained on, that kind of a thing, it can handle it. And I think that's made them even better. Personally, they're more comfortable in those kind of conditions now. A lot of folks, wouldn't be wearing this on a camp out necessarily, but you could. And it's a lot more equipped to handle that now than it used to be. I would imagine, Gina, in 50, 60 years, someone's going to have this uniform, maybe, right? Who knows? My grandson, someone like that will say, and it'll hold up well.
Somebody will be talking about you on a Facebook Live.
That's exactly right. And if we could, Gina, just real quick, I want to point some folks to 3 different uniform resources that are out there online. If you have any questions about the right uniform parts, where you can buy them. And by the way, we should point out that the real uniform experts are at your local Scout shop. We know that everybody, it's easy to buy stuff online and you can buy a Scout uniform online. There's no problem. But if you really have questions about the uniform and which patch do I need and which one, where does this go and which goes over here, the folks at your local Scout shop are very, very equipped to answer those questions, probably more so than Gina and I are.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. And I know Aaron's going to go over a little bit about what goes where, and he's going to give some resources so that you guys can bookmark those and have them later. But I think like back to school season, you should take a trip to the Scout shop, have a little bit of it. They will look at your uniform shirts, make sure everything looks right, or advise you where certain things go. You can ask them all the questions. And I definitely think if you're a new Scout parent, that's a really fun first activity to go to the Scout shop, talk to them, and you have them, advise you.
I totally remember doing that with my son when he first signed up. Back then, there were no lions. So we went and got his Tiger Cub uniform. And that was a very cool day. Back then, the Scout shop did not have the website that they do now. It's called the Uniform Builder, Gina. And you can go online to this website right here. And you can choose how old your Scout is. They've got options for tiger, wolf, bear, and weebillows, which is 4th and 5th grade. It shows you the different colored neckerchiefs, right? The neckerchiefs are different per color. The rank patches are going to be different depending on which ranks they've earned as they get older, things like that. They can wear all those patches. One thing you might notice, Gina, is that there's no lion, the Uniform Builder. The lion uniform is not listed in there. And the reason why is because lions, their uniform is a t-shirt,
right?
Which, it's a very cool looking t-shirt, appropriate for a kindergartner, I think it would be, right?
And
So,
very cool. And they have shorts, pants, and
Yep.
a very cool skirt that has inspired. Well, actually, I think are they the Cub Scout pants? I think they're
the
the Cub
lion
Scout
pants.
bottoms. Yeah.
That's a great question.
I think it's
Are
true.
they the same as Cub
Chime
Scout
in.
bottoms?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I bet our readers will know.
Mm-hmm.
There's also on the official Cub Scout website, which is on scouting.org. There's a whole page dedicated to the Cub Scout uniform, where you can see photos of each rank uniform, including the Lion Cub, and it's got a link to the there it is right there. It's got a link to the Scout Shop website for each uniform, and it also describes each one. The shirt and the lion, the official lion T-shirt. The belt is navy blue, for example. The cap is navy blue. Lions can wear neckerchiefs, but that's optional. And on and on and on through all the different ranks. Very, very convenient there. And Gina, the last resource that I want to point out, someone actually posted this in the comments, I believe. Maybe it was Brian that posted in the comments, actually. Yeah, the Cub Scout insignia guide. And that's a really handy resource for knowing where to put your patches on, which one goes in the left shoulder, which one goes in your right shoulder. What about this guy right here? What goes down there? What, if anything, goes right there? What even what goes on your shoulder straps here? All kinds of information there. Those are probably the three most important websites you can bookmark. Make a little bookmark folder, call it Scouting Uniforms, and have those three websites in there. And if anybody has any questions about uniforms,
updated.
Yep. They are updated, and will contain the answers to a lot of questions that folks have about the uniforms.
Yeah, those important links are being dropped in the comments wherever you are watching this broadcast right now. So be sure to head to them, bookmark them. And Christine echoes, I direct parents to the insignia guide. I think that's a great point, something to bring up early, because uniforms can be kind of complicated. They don't need to be, they shouldn't be, but they are for some, especially when you're new.
Exactly. And the insignia guide does a great job of kind of laying it out, because there's a lot of patches that you can put on your shoulders that honestly I wasn't that familiar with. Did you know what the veteran unit bar is? Gina, had you ever heard of that?
No.
I hadn't either until just a few hours ago. So the veteran unit bar is a bar that I bet some of our readers will know.
But
some of our viewers will know. It's called the veteran unit bar. It goes between the council patch and between the unit number. It's right where it says on that file that Brian is showing, left sleeve position 2A.
Is that how old the unit is?
It's exactly right. That's how many years the unit is. They come in double digits. You can't just get one for any year. They come in double digits. The biggest number is 105. You can get one that has 105 years old. Yeah. So the 25 is the smallest number you can get. So once your unit gets to be 25 years old, if you decide as a committee that you want to, you could add the veteran unit bar, and then you could update it every 5 years should you choose to. Not required, but you could. I think that's kind of cool. I didn't even realize that was a thing.
Yes. I didn't either. Thank you for educating us. If you have a 105-year-old veteran unit,
I'd be wearing a patch on mine.
Please let us know. Yep. We want to send you something. If you can prove that you have a 105-year-old unit, we would love to send you some good stuff.
And let's maybe real quick, Hannah has a good question.
I wanted to ask you that.
Yes.
I wanted to ask you on behalf of
If you're so Hannah asked, if you're a leader in both a pack and a troop, which epaulets position patch do you wear? The epaulets, I think is that how you pronounce that?
I say epaulette, yeah.
Epaulette, that's this thing right here. Those are really easy to switch out. And very inexpensive. So
it's hard to show.
It's impossible to show to people, but it's really, hold on, let me just get real quick.
I can take mine off and put them back on.
Those are very easy to switch out. I would suggest, Hannah, that you just switch those out. It's very easy to do. The position patch, mine is, I can't take this off without tearing mine off, so I would not be able to switch that out. And but you do have the option of being a little smarter than me and buying one that's removable. But you are not required to do that, Hannah. You're allowed to wear whatever is appropriate for whatever unit you're registered in, whatever you have at the time. You're not required to buy a separate patch, to buy a separate epaulette. You're allowed to wear whatever you have. I would suggest the epaulette. Those are easy. Switch those out. This is a little more complicated. Look into it. Look into the removable ones, the Velcro fasteners, things like that. If that works for you, maybe give that a shot.
You know what, Aaron? I think Rob's right that this itself is the epaulette and that these are the shoulder loops.
The epaulette is the tab that it is buttoned. Shoulder loops. Okay. The epaulette.
EPAULET.
So this
if you're
thing
wondering
here's
why we're debating how you.
This is the shoulder. What is this?
Shoulder loop.
This is the shoulder loop, and it's attached to
an epaulette.
Okay. Perfect. Yes. There you go. Well,
I do think people use them interchangeably, though, so I don't think you're going to sound too off. But
right.
Paige says, "How do you find out how old your unit is?" Paige, I would ask your leadership, and if your leadership doesn't know, talk to your commissioner, see if they can help you figure that out. I think, right?
Yep, your council will have those records, but I would definitely talk to leadership. Your charter organization might know, although the charter organization can change over the years. Ultimately, your commissioner, your district commissioner, your unit commissioner, or your district executive, that's a council employee, they can look it up in the system and see when it was chartered exactly. If you're curious, if you think you might have an older unit, you find your local council, right? Local council locator, you can enter your zip code. That will give you the number for your local council. You can call them up or shoot them an email. And whoever answers the phone is going to be able to put you in touch with the right person to tell you. You want to find out when was my unit chartered. I'm trying to find out the year in which my unit chartered so I can figure out how old it is.
Right. Good info. Bryce brought up a point that I've honestly never thought of, but it makes sense. But some people might be sensitive to seeing a uniform for the first time. If you come from a different culture, it might just be super foreign to you. So be sensitive to that. I think that's a good point. And new families even. Anthony's talked about that. When you are doing a recruiting event and everyone is wearing maybe your Class A, sometimes that can be a bit intimidating and people really feel like, I don't know what I'm looking at. It's a little bit more inside baseball. So it's just good things to think about.
I had someone explain to me, use an analogy. Be interested to see if folks agree with this or not, that the uniform like we're wearing right now should be thought of almost kind of like a business suit in that, it's perfect for ceremonies, courts of honor, boards of review, maybe pack meetings if you choose to, but certainly blue and gold banquets, things like that. But other times you might want to consider being a little more casual. You probably have a troop t-shirt. You can wear that when you're recruiting people for the first time, right? Just like if you show up and everybody's wearing a coat and tie at a meeting and you're not, you might feel a little bit like, okay, I'm not supposed to be here. It seems a little stuffy, seems a little too formal. The scout uniform is kind of similar.
Yeah, I think that's a great point.
Yep.
Aaron, you kind of touched on it, but I want to ask it again and just see what your answer is. Why do Cub Scouts even wear uniforms?
Yeah, a great question, Gina. And I think there's a few different reasons. Like you said, you guys talked about this. Was that just yesterday? You guys talked about this on your show?
Wednesday.
2 days ago?
Feels like yesterday.
Yes. The uniforms are just one of the several different methods of, in this case, Cub Scouting. Yes. 8, is that how many there are? Okay. Yes. The uniform is just one of 8 methods of Cub Scouting. It's not the only one. It's not necessarily even the most important one necessarily, but it exists to make people feel like a team, to make people feel like they belong to something, to make people, to show that kind of, that we're all the same. We're all equal. When we go to official scouting events, we should all be treated equally, right? We wear a uniform. It's an expression of uniformity, Gina. We do it because we're all part of the same team, and it builds some pride. And one of the things that I think is cool about the uniform are, your troop number. This is not going to be the same, obviously, for everybody, right? There's going to be, if you're in a different troop or different pack, you're going to have a different number. So that's everybody in your pack has the same number over there. That's really cool when you go to events with other packs and you see folks with other numbers and things like that. That's really fun and really cool. So the uniform is just one of several methods of scouting, which is I think a neat way to put it.
Yeah. So I honestly didn't have a very well-rounded view or understanding of what the methods were. And Angelique explained, there's 8 methods, kind of like what you said. None of them are more important or less important. None of them, it doesn't mean you have to use all 8. Meaning, which I honestly didn't know this, that uniforms aren't required necessarily.
Yeah.
You could choose. Yeah, they can be highly recommended.
Highly encouraged, right.
Mm-hmm.
And we could probably do a whole show, Gina, depending on what kind of population you're serving. Uniform is not free, right? People have to pay for that out of their pockets.
So glad you brought this up.
Yes. So, if you're going to require the uniform, you probably also need to think about how are we going to help folks out who
You
don't
mean
have the
highly
resources.
encouraged, but
Highly
yeah.
encourage the uniform. Yes, right. It's probably not cool to highly encourage the uniform and then just leave folks on their own. So there's lots of different options for that. One of them, the favorite ones that I like, are kind of a uniform hand-me-down program where Cub Scouts who age out as they get a and by the way, this kind of goes into what John said. John comments, nothing better than seeing your Cubs move from the blue to the tan uniform. When your Cub Scouts get to Weevilow's age, they can go to a tan uniform, which is the same uniform they will wear in Boy Scouts. Well, what do you do with that blue uniform then? Maybe you like to keep it as a keepsake. I get it.
And you probably have a couple because kids grow.
You very well might have more than one. Maybe you donate it to the pack, donate it to the den, right? And so a new kid who comes in, you've already got a uniform there for him. We already just mentioned how they're built to last. It's probably in good shape. You can throw it in the washing machine. It's fine. I love the idea of donating it to your pack and letting them then present it to a new family who comes in and doesn't have those kind of resources. There's other options you can do. Obviously fundraisers. You might use your fundraisers to pay for camping and things like that, but there's nothing that says you can't use them to sponsor a kid and buy them a uniform. You can do that as well, depending on how hard you want to work at fundraising. Yep.
John says they do a Cub Scout closet. So it kind of same idea. Even if you don't know a scout who maybe needs the uniform that you have as a hand-me-down, try to find a leader who will hang on to it, a parent who will hang on to it. I know that I see when I go to like Goodwill and Salvation Army, I see uniforms, like a random shirt here, pants there. And if you have the means to snag those up and kind of start a backlog, I think that they'll get snatched up. Because if you're a family that's looking for one, maybe and you're going to thrift stores, it's really hard to find all the pieces you need and the size you need. So just having a little backlog, I think, is a great idea.
And I think that's a pretty easy thing for a family to do. Or, you get a volunteer in your pack and say, okay, you're in charge of the uniform locker. As our commenters are calling it, as Nelson says, yes. And so that's that parent's job is to, hey, when scouts start switching over uniforms or as they start growing, sometimes you may have two different blue uniforms, depending on how much they grow from first to third grade. But we know some of them grow a lot. So, hey, just remind everybody every once in a while, hey, if you're outgrowing a uniform or if you're buying a new one, please give me your old one and we'll add it to the locker. And you just sort of maintain that over the years. That job gets passed down to another parent as the pack turns over. And that's a super convenient, cool race. How great would that be for a new family to come in and just see all these uniform options there and know, you can go buy your own if you want to. Not saying you can't go buy your new one.
No, right.
But if you don't want to,
we love for you to buy a new uniform.
Yes, right.
But you don't
have
a
whole locker lined up with different sizes. That to me is a really cool way to do it.
I'm tracking with Christine. I really do think you could gather up quite a few uniforms from thrift stores.
Yep.
John mentions Facebook Marketplace. You can find some complete uniforms for pennies on the dollar. That's true. Yep. You can find vintage stuff that people just don't know that they've got. That you can find some really cool stuff that way.
Yeah.
And kind of on this point, I loved hearing. It was refreshing for Angelique to touch on this too. If you're a parent, understandably, you want to have an idea of how the insignia goes on a uniform and you can help guide your scout. And if you are a leader, there's probably a really nice way for you to talk to a scout here or there who needs some guidance on how their uniform works. But really, it's an equalizer. It's to make everyone feel included and good about themselves, not bad about themselves. So really, there's no reason to be making somebody feel less than if they mess something up on the uniform. It's not that easy. Let's cut each other a break. And it's definitely, we are not asking you to point out on social media if anybody's uniform doesn't look perfect, because you guys all work with kids. You know that the uniform can look great one minute, bad the next, good one day, and then they found some random thing the next day, or they switched uniforms with a friend. So just don't worry about correcting uniforms, especially on social media, is my opinion.
I agree with that, Gina. And also at a lot of Cub Scout events for sure, and I think this continues into the older programs, but at Cub Scout events, our kids were constantly getting patches from camporees we would go to. They would give out patches, and they would often ask, what am I supposed to do with this patch? Because many of those patches, for the most part, aren't supposed to be officially attached to the uniform. If you don't know the culture of scouting, you might be confused. Why are we getting all these patches? They can be worn as what we call temporary insignia. That usually means they hang from one of your pocket buttons like that. Yeah, that hangs there. But these kids are excited about their patches. They just got a patch. I agree. If you see one and the kid's not wearing it the right way, he's gotten excited, he's put it on. Maybe he's attached it up here instead of over here. You know what? Is that really the big deal? Now maybe down the line, you point out, hey, buddy, move it down here or whatever. But I agree. You have no idea if you see a photo on Facebook or something like that, that kid may have gotten that patch a few minutes earlier and he's so excited to have it. Who knows? No one's had a chance to really tell him where to put it yet.
Yes.
Who knows where it's going to end up? It could end up anywhere.
They are kids. And honestly, the same could go for adults too. Like, we want people to want to wear the uniform if it's something that we're encouraging in our unit. So that may not make them want to put it back on. Todd mentions he's got an Eagle Scout knot on his uniform. Very cool. And Angelique pointed out that we don't have to go, like, even, adult to adult, there is a right direction to have those knots on your uniform, but no, it's difficult. Everyone messes it up from time to time. So there's no need to tell somebody they have their knot upside down.
Yes, I agree 100%. I think that a lot of packs and a lot of troops have uniform inspections where maybe everyone will line up and they get the uniform inspection. There's nothing wrong with that, but that's probably another opportunity to just kind of be, sensitive and aware of to be friendly. A scout is friendly. Yeah. Right. That doesn't mean you get to embarrass a kid because you've made a mistake or who his parents didn't know any better. Most likely,
don't send them home, make them take their uniform off. It's no big deal.
The most likely scenario is that their parent made a mistake, most likely, right? Or they just forgot a certain piece. Hey, it happens. Nothing wrong with reminding him and just saying, hey, bud, make sure you wear this the right way. Do this next time. Nothing wrong with that. But it's not an opportunity to make them feel bad, I think.
Right. And I honestly think I get the uniform inspection thing, but I think if you can tackle those things one-on-one, not one-on-one, of course, but just
do that.
Right, exactly. But in a way where you're not embarrassing a kid in front of everybody, I think that helps. Yes. Aaron, I know honestly we
could talk longer about uniforms if you wanted to.
I have one more thing I wanted to talk about before I know we need to let everybody go. If you have any questions, this is your last minute questions and comments to get those in. But Aaron, we've talked about this on Wednesday, and these are some of my favorite stories. When I first started working out at the BSA, I was like, wait, what? I thought this uniform thing was so regimented that I just didn't know that this was even a possibility. But certain kids have different kinds of sensory sensitivities to certain material. But I think buttons are a big one. There are accommodations to be made for those scouts. Is that right?
Yes, there absolutely is. And this is an issue that you can talk about in your, once again, committee. This is a decision you can make with your committee. And it just encourage folks, committee meetings should be open to anybody. Anybody can go and say, hey, my child has an issue with this, that, or whatever. Just explain it very calmly. There's no reason why they can't accommodate you. If there's any issues, your district commissioner, Rob would be the first one to point out, is going to be your best friend for things like that. But that's absolutely true. Yeah, some kids might not like the neckerchief, might feel stuffy or whatever they're wearing, or if you want to wear a hat or whatever it might be, that could cause issues, right?
Well, a big one I see come up all the time is replacing the buttons with Velcro. No big deal. Totally okay.
Yeah.
You can do that if you need to for your kid.
I cannot imagine a scenario in which that's hurting anybody if they were to do that, right?
Absolutely. Guys, you guys have so many good comments. I wish we could get to all of these.
The comments. I want to, Nelson says that they use their popcorn money to buy a supply of packed t-shirts. That's actually what I did when I was back in my day. Used to be one of those right there. We would use our fundraising money to buy packed t-shirts for everybody. One shirt. Now, if they wanted to replace it, they would replace it with their own money. But as they joined the pack, we would buy them a t-shirt with our funds, and that way everybody had a t-shirt. So I mean, I think that's great, Nelson.
Francie says something that I can kind of understand. I can definitely relate to, saying that she sometimes has uniform pieces mix and match. She gets upset when someone points it out. She mixed up her shoulder loops or something silly because she's got so many rolls. Sometimes just something's off. So I feel for you, Francie. Yeah. That's totally not what it's about. Thanks for all you're doing for scouting. I think we're headed the right direction with this. I think people used to be pretty stodgy about uniforms, and now I think we're a lot more like.
And I agree. And friends, I certainly can feel your frustration. I would just say whoever's saying that to you, probably coming from a good place, right? They're just a little bit maybe overzealous when they say they don't know what you've got going on. So yeah, like Gina said, thanks for what you're doing. We appreciate it. Please stick with it. Just do your best. That's all we say on Cub Chat Live. Just do your best.
We got a funny comment. Rusty asking, did we plan to talk about uniforms the same week as Scout or Stan? Absolutely not. But I found an old video from Scout or Stan today. The first time, honestly, I had gotten to watch one of his videos. It was so good. How funny that you mentioned that.
I didn't know that was his show for this week. Yeah, very cool.
John, thanks for tuning in. Everybody, thanks for tuning in. Shout out to your units.
Discussion.
What's that?
Good discussion today,
Yeah.
Gina.
Post
Yep.
some photos of you guys in your awesome uniforms. We love to see it. And we're going to talk about Class B sometime soon too, because I love to wear, a Scout t-shirt.
Absolutely. Again, I always go back to the meaning of the word uniform, right? The word uniform does not necessarily mean this piece of clothing. It just means that you're all dressed in a uniform way. And a Class B t-shirt can accomplish that as well. We had red Class B t-shirts for a few years in my pack, and then we switched over to yellow. And it was even mix and match in some time. Some of the older kids, we didn't force them to buy new yellow shirts if they didn't want to. They could continue to wear their red shirts. Guess what? It was still uniform. We still had a uniform look about us.
Right. Well, it wasn't just wear any old t-shirt. There were a few options. It's an equalizer in some ways. And that can be, I think that, for me, I know my struggle with wanting to put a uniform on sometimes is that I feel like such an individual. I want to be such an individual, but I realize that's the whole point, that we're trying to be a team, work together, not try to stand out. So it is a really good and important lesson, I think.
Yes, 100%. The uniform, like we said, it is one of the methods of scouting, no more important or less important than any of the other methods. It works. So, wear the uniform when it's appropriate for you and in your unit. And it works.
Again, we have put some valuable links in the comments wherever you are watching this broadcast, so you can learn a little bit about what goes where on a uniform, bookmark these items, see the Cub Scout uniform specifically. And again, we encourage you to head to Scout Shop, talk to those good folks. They know so
I was going to say, if you have questions, and some of the folks are asking questions in the comments, we might not have time to get to them today. Your Scout Shop can answer them, as can your commissioner. That is their job. Your unit commissioner or your district commissioner, that's their job. If they don't know the answer, they can track down the answer for you when it comes to uniforms. John is asking about cords and things like that, and there's a lot of details about things, I don't know like that.
The answer to John's question.
Right. Yeah, me neither. But there are a lot of accessories like that, and there are some rules about how they're supposed to be worn. Your Scout Shop will know, John, as will or your district commissioner, or your unit commissioner. If they don't, they'll look it up for you.
You could also, he's gonna hate that I'm saying this, but John, I can see you're watching on YouTube. You can hop on over to Facebook and watch this, and Rob might be able to answer your questions too. He's a good buddy commissioner of ours.
Yeah, so. Rob, get over to the YouTube channel and answer John's question.
John's got a good question for you. Aaron, this was a great episode. I think we need to talk about our uniforms more. Yes,
we will definitely do it again. We'll have to do it maybe this fall as units are convening for the new school year. We'll talk about that. That's when everyone will start wearing the uniforms again, most likely.
I'm going to take my old uniform, my 80s vintage uniform, to Scout Shop, see if they can help me spiff it up in time for our next show.
There you go. Perfect. Thank you all for watching this episode of Cub Scout Live. Hey, Gina, good job. It's fun hosting with you. Enjoyed it. It is time for I think the weekend's officially here now. So everybody, you have my permission to not do any work the rest of the day.
Really?
Yes, absolutely. Permission from Mr. Aaron. If anybody asks who told you, tell them it was Mr. Aaron. Thank you all for watching. Enjoy the weekend. We'll see you next week. Bye, everybody.